Can we talk?
Can we talk?
Can we talk?
¿Podemos hablar?
Can we talk?
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Can We Talk podcast. You have Angela here, and who else do we have today?
Hello, hi. This is Chris. I'm one of the I'm the law enforcement liaison for our organization.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lily, and I am the community outreach educator.
And again, my name is Angela, and I am the Sexual Assault Services Coordinator here with Colorado River Regional Crisis Services. So, since last week, what have you all done? Like, what some fun things that you guys have worked on, or as an organization in the community? What are some things?
As far as the organization, I actually got the training that we're going to be providing to our local law enforcement is already started. So,
Nice.
And then I actually have been working on getting a sex trafficking class set up for our law enforcement again, investigation class. So that should be coming along here next month.
Nice.
Awesome. I'm excited for that.
See, on the other side, I guess the highlight of the week was just the father-daughter dance.
Oh, yes. That was fun. That was
Yeah,
fun.
really did a good job. So did Nicole.
Yeah, they really did a good job. It's really
Yeah,
pretty.
my legs are sore. Climbing up and down the ladder.
Oh, yeah.
The decorations looked great. Thank you, Chris.
They did.
Yeah, father-daughter dance was great. That was a big event to pull off, and I think it went wonderful. It's so awesome to see the relationships between fathers and daughters, and it was a nice full circle moment knowing I used to go to those events with my dad, and it's nice to know that our office is promoting and fostering healthy relationships, because we know that those healthy relationships help decrease the risk of domestic and sexual violence with these little girls that were there.
Absolutely. I love that we have that annually and that people do come and they have such a good time. I love seeing the dads really just go out there and do it all. I was like, yes, I love this for them. So yes, I had a lot of good time.
Yeah, we should give a shout out to the Elks.
Elks Lodge 1929, they were a huge sponsor for us. They donated the venue for free for us, as well as provided dinner, and they served as well. We really couldn't have pulled the event off without them, so huge thank you to them.
Okay, so as for me, what did I do over this last week since the last podcast? I've just been working in crisis. Working in the shelter life. It's been good, honestly.
Are you working with crisis?
Working in the emergency shelter.
There you go. Okay.
Let me clarify. You're working in the emergency shelter as far as that, but I've also been just preparing some stuff for our sexual assault group, our inspiration group that we're starting, and then we're going to be doing a domestic violence 101 group in emergency shelters. So I'm excited about that. I'm really excited to get into groups. I love doing groups because I can be so creative, and that's where you really get to know the residents in shelters, so I really enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm so sad you missed our vision board group that we did last week. It came out so good.
Oh man, I forgot I wasn't here for that. I love vision boards.
Me
My
too.
favorite.
I hung mine up in my office.
I need to do one. All right. Well, thank you all for sharing that. So, what is today's topics going to be? It is going to be, why do they stay?
That's hard.
It is hard. It can be a challenging topic to talk about. So, we want to just put a disclaimer out there to any survivors that are listening to really take care of yourself.
Yes.
If you need to pause and come back to this, definitely do that. But we also want to just make sure that we are, providing that support for you and also educating you at the same time. So, what are some reasons why people stay in relationships?
It's like a broad spectrum too. There's a lot of reasons. I can think of one would just be fear. Fear of what's going to happen, fear if they tell anyone or they let that known. So And you can see that with a lot that are, how would you say, that are your silent ones.
Yeah.
We've experienced some that, were, a lot of the makeup and things like that. So I would say one of them is fair.
Yeah, and we're talking about domestic violence relationships. And why don't they leave domestic violence relationships? So I want to be specific about that. The fear of just the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
This is their normal life relationship, and so fear is a really big one. Another one is their shame. Their shame that they're even in this situation, especially if this is their first time being in a relationship, a long term relationship, and they're so excited and it's been so good. And so they don't want their friends and family to know, like, I'm actually in a domestic violence situation and I'm being harmed. And I don't want anyone to know that. So that's a really good one.
Yeah, I think also in that, it's kind of, we talk about shame, but the thing is that, they shouldn't have to feel shameful about
Right.
that. There's people like us. That's why we're putting this out here. To let
Mm-hmm.
them know that we're here.
Mm-hmm.
We can talk to you. We don't necessarily have to go into, you know, bringing in law enforcement, or we have people to sit down and talk to
Mm-hmm.
and plan. So
And it's
just want to
not
put that there.
it's not the victim's fault.
Right. Right. They
So,
we want them to definitely know that it's not your fault. It's the behavior of your partner that is causing this abusive relationship. And we also, want to talk about in the relationship, sometimes that you're in it for so long and that person has emotionally and physically harmed you, and your self esteem is just completely shot. And you feel like you're not worth, you know, anything, any positive, relationship, friendships, you just feel absolutely nothing. But again, to Chris's point, there are people out there that will support you and help you, encourage you, and pour into your cup to
Mm-hmm.
help you feel that strength again to be able to start a whole new life and healing journey.
Yeah.
yeah, and I think we see that a lot. I know I see that a lot here with what they call it normalization.
Yes.
So,
Mm-hmm.
normalization, is just the fact of it could be passed on from generation to generation. I've had heard some terms of, it'll be okay. I
Mm-hmm.
went through it. It'll be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry about it. And so that's where it's normalized as part of the marriage, part of the
Mm-hmm.
relationship. So
Mm-hmm.
I kind of see, like I said, what you're talking about there. So
Yeah, it's normalized in the family, the generations. Oh, it happened to my mom. It happened to my dad. It's
Mm-hmm.
fine. It's not fine.
It's not normal either.
Yeah.
I think another big one, especially here in Parker, being so small, is the lack of resources.
Absolutely.
I know a lot of times in the victims and survivors that come into our office, we hear that their partner controls the car they drive,
Mm-hmm.
controls their access to finances, controls the family they can talk to, the doctor that they're able to go and see. Those things can make it really hard out here.
Mm-hmm.
So, lack of resources is also a big one.
Right.
And again, I'm going to circle back to our office, and that's the beauty of our agency having mobile advocacy. If they're not able to come here, we are able to go to them or find a meeting spot where they feel safe to talk about what's going on. So we do try and combat these barriers as well.
and
Right.
then yeah, and that's a good one too because I know like there's been some people, like I said, confidentiality is really important to our organization for
Huge.
Mandatory.
for the victims or survivors. So even just calling and making a plan to meet. I know we've met somebody somewhere and
Mm-hmm.
transported them back here and got them into the office without them wanting to be known that they were here.
Right.
So we can work around all of that too. So
Right. And to that point, for both you and Lily and Chris, the small town is a huge factor in why a lot of victim survivors don't leave, because they know everyone in the community, everyone's has seen their
Exactly.
relationship, and so it's hard for them to even come out and say like, oh, I went to high school with this girl and now she's, in this relationship, or I know them from going to this community event, and so no one really wants to talk about what's actually happening. And it's okay to feel like that, but just know that there are agencies out there like ours that can support you in that. To make sure that your information stays confidential, that your safety is the number one priority,
Yes.
and that you have people out there to support.
yeah, it's just like you said. Even families. That's the one thing that I've always seen is that how families are trying to fix it. It could be so that it doesn't get out.
Right.
They're trying to keep their family business. And so that could be a barrier also, and because you just don't know how bad it could be,
Right. Or it can get.
or it's starting
Yeah.
to get. So I see, like I said, families trying to fix it themselves, and it's not a very good way or a positive way to do that. So
Speaking of families, I know one topic we haven't really mentioned yet is children.
Oh yes.
That's a huge reason I think a lot of victims and survivors stay is they want to stay for the kids, keep a family unit, or who's going to care for the kids if I leave, who's going to watch them after school.
Right.
Kids are also a really big reason for why they would stay.
yeah, and that's just like you said, who's going to watch the kids, who's the worker, who's working and making the money, who's
Right.
bringing food, who's paying the bills, who's that there's a lot of factors in that when like you said, when children come in, because it can be very challenging.
Right. It
So
can be.
especially if you have more than two, maybe
Yeah.
3, 4.
And depending on the age, right? If you have small children, it's very hard to take them away from their other parent, especially if they have a relationship with them, right? And you think, oh, they're just such a great parent. I don't want to take them away from that. But you have to think about not only your safety, but their safety as well.
Absolutely.
And seeing what's happening in the home and how it can affect them long term, and how it can affect you as the survivor long term as well. And just making safety the number one priority in the whole situation.
And then another factor too is just the love factor. Especially if
Yeah.
somebody's been together for years. Or like you said, I think we had talked about one time was when you just meet or you just met.
Yeah, the honeymoon stage.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out. What's the honeymoon stage? I think Lily had said that about just just trying to fix someone, trying
Right.
to
You're in love with their potential.
exactly.
Oof, that's like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're like, no, I know this person can be this way, and if I can just love them through this, then it'll be all good.
it's so hard.
That is literally gambling with your safety at that point.
Yes.
Because we want to love that person. We want to see that person, doing all those great things, right? But we have to really live in the present and what is happening in this moment. Am I feeling safe in my home? Am I feeling comfortable in my home? Am I, able to access the finances and leave, when I want to? My days aren't being controlled. And so you have to think about the present moment and not what the person either was in the past,
Yeah.
or what they have the potential to be.
Definitely.
So love is a huge factor. You
That's a hard one.
yeah. Love is
That's
very
a hard
strong.
one. What about like intimidation? Like, I want to leave, but let's say my partner has pictures of me that he's threatening to send out if I do leave, or, I mean, that's always one, especially nowadays with nudes being so
Right.
common.
Right. Yeah. When you're sharing an intimate time with your partner, and because they're mad at whatever the case may be in the situation, and they start to threaten you, that's a huge factor as well. And not only with photos, but they threaten you, with economically. You won't be able to survive without my money, or you won't be able to survive without the kids, or those threats and intimidation is a huge one when it comes to staying, because you don't want to risk losing those things, or risk your personal intimate photos or videos out in the open to anyone.
Reputation, especially in a small town.
Right. Oh, especially in a small town. Yeah, you definitely think about that before leaving an abusive relationship.
I think, just kind of giving maybe a little bit of what to look for is, you know, when you're getting into a relationship, try, if you notice, this kind of circles back to, like financial, if you notice that, the house is in their name,
Right.
the car's in their name, the bank account's in their name, anything, that can be held over you, or you can't have access to any of that, can be red flag.
Right.
So I think some of those things go there. And a lot of times too, with when you're talking about intimidation, really was, we kind of see, and I know every small town sees this, but there's always like who they know, and especially if they're related or they're have ties, to law enforcement, that could be a really big barrier.
Big one.
Just because they don't want to report because either the brother's part of the law enforcement or the dad or sister, that can really hold somebody back from wanting to come out and
Yeah.
seek help.
Right.
So
And also in a small town, you see how the functionality of it. If you do report, what are the outcomes when it comes to that? And so that can also keep someone in a relationship, because like, they're not going to do anything.
Yeah.
They're not going to support. But that's not always the case. I want to make that very clear, is that we have a really great collaboration with law enforcement here. And when you're ready, or if you're ready, to make those reports or talk to law enforcement, even just to get the understanding of what the process is,
yeah,
we can definitely support you in that. And to that point, what are some things that survivors can do to get ready to leave, or when they do leave? What are some things that we can support with, or what are some things that they, as the survivor, can do?
I think it just kind of depends. And like if you're in a really bad situation where it's become really violent, um, I would say what we call a go bag. Something that you have. I would also recommend Xeroxing your driver's license, your birth certificate, anything that has all your personal info on there. So security cards, even for the kids,
Right.
have copies of those. That way, you can put those in that bag. You can put extra money you want in there.
Right.
You can put, just anything, in that moment. If you really had to just leave and go, you could grab it and go,
Just grab and go.
like something that has, maybe some diapers in there. It doesn't have to be a lot, just
Right.
maybe 5 diapers in there, a thing of wipes, extra clothes for the kids or extra clothes for you. Um, um, Probably tennis shoes and sandals,
Yeah.
and just things like that, just extra hygiene stuff that you're going to need when you do go. You may not directly go to shelter, so somebody may help you to go to a hotel, or but as long as you have that and you just go, rather than trying to gather things together and racing to either they get home or they're coming home, or you just grab it, get it, and take off.
Yeah, I agree. I think, just from the perspective of a survivor, if you are thinking about leaving, that is the initial part, right? Like, okay, I know I have to get out of this relationship, but what do I need to do? So yes, a go bag is number one with your vital documents, and if you do have children, definitely pack a pair of clothes for each person, and your vital documents. Another way of handling or making sure you have your vital documents is creating a fresh new email account. I usually like to recommend Gmail because it's easily accessible anywhere.
Yeah, that's good.
And uploading, if you have access to upload your vital documents to that drive, and you can access it anywhere, or a flash drive, and making sure that go bag is in a safe, secure location that your partner won't find, because that can really mess up the whole process, because we all know that leaving an abusive relationship is the most dangerous time for a survivor.
Absolutely.
That's because it, that's when they feel like they're losing control, and they want to do any and everything to try to keep you there. And so we want to make sure that you're staying safe while doing that. And
Yeah, and not necessarily even keep it at your own house. They could keep it at a friend's. They could keep it at somebody who they can trust. That way it's there. They can go by, pick it up, and be able to get out or to leave. Put it that way. So.
And two, if you decide to, if you're thinking about leaving, connect with our services. If you're local, connect with us. We can walk you through that step before leaving to make sure you have everything you need, and you safety plan before leaving. And then once you do decide to leave, like I said, if you're local, we have an emergency shelter that we can get you connected with. Or if you're wanting to relocate, or if you're in another area, we can get you connected to the same type of services in those areas.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are some other things that survivors can do to leave? Or as advocates, what can we do if they call us and say, hey, I'm thinking about leaving, this is my situation? How do we support them in that?
Oh, we can always, direct them into emergency shelter. We could always, uh, depending on their situation, maybe better ideas to get out of the area.
Yeah.
So we have that capability to, make those calls and things. So that way they can, leave until everything starts to, cool down, or however it goes.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, we can help them create an exit safety plan.
There you go. Yeah.
And I guess, and just other resources that we can connect them to, especially because a lot of times these become depressing times. They become anxiety, things like that. They may have to talk with somebody, depending on how long they've been in the abuse or how bad it's been, and so they may also be having some PTSD issues. So, that would be something where we can provide a service for them to come in or have them talk to.
Right.
So I think, what do you think, Blake?
I think step number one for advocates and also family or friends that they're confiding in is to just believe them. I think a big thing that the fact that they're telling you or telling us in our agency that they're in an abusive relationship, that's a huge first step. And I think just believing them and telling them that they're heard and they're understood is step one into helping to make sure that they get out of that safely, because they're not going to trust us to get them out of the situation safely if they don't feel that we believe them.
Right. That's a huge one. It's just start by believing.
Mm-hmm.
Is a perfect way to start as an advocate, as a family friend.
I think just offering emotional support, and each person is different. I do really well from, let's say, a victim's perspective. There's some people that do really well with having someone that's going to sit there and mourn the relationship and cry with them and have the emotional reciprocation. But then there's also going to be victims and survivors that need someone to be a strong point and say, you got this, let's keep going.
Yeah.
Let's wipe your tears, let's pull it together, and let's figure out the next step. And I think it's being a good advocate is being able to balance both sides of that and knowing
Right.
how to navigate that.
And meeting them where they're at.
Exactly.
Right.
I think that's the part I like also, because you can, it's a lot of the stuff they come into, they don't understand. You don't understand an order of protection on how to fill it out, what's going to happen, how it works, even all the way to if the person were to contest it. That's why it's kind of important that they know those steps, how to file for divorce or separation, emergency custody.
And
I
that's
know,
that's why we're here.
yeah,
Right.
and that's the whole thing. Is able to help them through that whole court mess that they have to sign out.
Yeah, because it can be like another language to somebody when it comes to the justice system.
Yeah,
It's a lot to take on, especially when you already have so much to think about. Trying to navigate the justice system is probably the last thing that they want to do.
yeah,
But you have people here that will walk you through that.
yeah, and we understand too. Because the other part is that, I mean, if say they didn't want to go through with an order of protection because of the challenge, him or that person challenging the order of protection.
Right.
I mean, those are things that we can respect those feelings, and then maybe, okay, well, maybe that's not a way to go.
Right, and that's a good point, is because us as advocates, if they call us and say, okay, I'm ready to go now, but then a few hours later they're like, oh wait, I don't want to go, or we're working with them in the community program, let's say, or even in general, they come into shelter and we're working with them one-on-one and they decide to go back, how do we as advocates support them in that?
Well, everything that comes out of our office is completely voluntary.
Right.
They're not required to fill out any legal documents or stay in shelter for a certain period of time. Everything is completely voluntary. We will give our professional advice and say we think this could be the best course of action, but the victim and survivor it's completely up to them on the steps they want to take.
And as an advocate, if they do decide to either stay in the relationship or go back to the relationship, we 100% respect that and will provide them with the resources and the education if they do decide to stay. And we're still here, where you can always come back. It's not just a one and done. It's
Right.
You can leave and come back, and we can support you. And whenever you decide to change your mind, whatever you feel is the safest for you or the best option for you, we are here to support you in that and still provide you services, even though you decide to go back to that.
Absolutely.
And I think another thing too is like, looking at the secondary victims, which is mostly kids, and I know that we provide that service. Nicole and Lily, do that service for kids to come in and, just kind of, talk about, what they want to talk about.
Yeah,
So
how they feel through it, right? We're thinking about, the parent and what they're going through and their emotions, but the children, they just don't even know what's going on. They don't know what's happening, especially if they're younger, right? The older ones, they kind of know something's off, but they don't know the full story. But for the young ones, they're like, well, why are we leaving our house?
Yeah.
Why are we going to stay here? And to that point, when you are transitioning into out of the relationship to find safety, is having those safety talks with your children, making sure they're not sharing the location of where you are going or where you're at, and having code words, making sure they know they're safe adults, trusted adults.
Yeah.
Having those conversations with them as well.
And then in just talking with about kids and children, I think we sometimes we look at adults, and we don't look at like with the teens. So the teens, if they're listening to this, then that applies also. Because like I said, I've seen, and I think Lily agrees with me, I've seen a lot of where this falls into play with teen dating.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a thing of they can also call us, or that we're available also.
100%. Yeah. If you need the support, and Lily, you want to speak more to that?
Yeah. And I thank you, Chris, for bringing this up. So teens in this situation, whether they're in a teen dating violence situation or they're secondary victims of their parents being in a DV situation, it's hard, especially as a teen, because I mean that's a confusing part of life. Period.
The emotions.
All over the place. That's such a hard stage of life to be in, and then adding on abuse on top. And if you don't know anything else and you think that's normal, then you talk to somebody about it, and then you're kind of alienated. You say, well, this is happening to me. Well, that's weird. Just leave. Well, I don't know how. And it can, I think, cause more emotional distress in those situations. And I know I try and be at the schools often, and we can sit and chat. I know Chris has gone with me to a couple schools as well to talk about teen dating violence.
And the other part too is that they go to school. They're around each other 8 hours during the school season. Every day, weekends, wherever they go gather, they're there. So it's not just with domestic violence, but we also just to let the teens know we also discuss and talk about sexual assault. We also do the sex trafficking, what to look out for, or what parents need to look out for, things like that. And then we do stalking, which I think is something that's actually, it's been here all the time. It's just hasn't really been recognized. And I can even say that, like from law enforcement, it never really was, it was not at the forefront, let's put it that way. It was just something that was like hard to prove, what evidence do you get? But now we're learning more and more. So, we just had this year, at the beginning of this year, I brought the Stalking Institute out of San Diego. They came down and did a stalking investigation for law enforcement. So all local law enforcement and the surrounding agencies also. So I think that's one thing that I kind of see a little bit more also in the younger, in the high school. So
I want to jump back to teens in dating violence situations. I know we're kind of talking about victims of DV, but I want to highlight one thing in teen dating violence relationships is I think a big reason that teens stay in those relationships is the social pressure to stay. Oh my gosh, he's the hottest guy in school, and I can't, he's so hot, I'll let him beat me up just so I can stay with him. I mean, I don't want him looking at anybody else or Snapchatting someone else or following those girls on Instagram, so I'll just let him or her do whatever so that they stay with me. I know I definitely see that when I go to the schools. I think another big one is the family pressure to stay. We're such a small town here that everybody knows everybody, and your family is connected to their family, and essentially can feel like an arranged marriage in a sense. It can be overwhelming. You're expected to stay, and when you tell them you want to leave, it can be hurtful to not only you but to the family as well. And as a teen, that's hard to wrap your head around. And this is where we come into play, that you need to put yourself first. Your emotions are number one, and your safety is number one, and your family should understand that and love you for making the right decision for yourself. And we are here to support you through that. Regardless, we can help you safety plan in school. We can help you talk with the teachers, talk with the principal to ensure a safety plan when getting out of that relationship.
Like you said too, as far as again, in these small rural towns, you also get sometimes parents get involved, and they're hounding or going after the girl, and because they broke up, so
you're hurt for your child,
son or daughter is heartbroken. So
you want to,
and those situations can get pretty
volatile.
bad. Yeah, definitely.
They can. I know we talked a lot about the different reasons why victim survivors stay in relationships, but one that we didn't mention is substance abuse.
Oof.
How does substance abuse play a part in abusive relationships, or domestic violence relationships? So if you have one person in a relationship that's misusing substances and the other person isn't, you love that person, so you're just like, oh, let me just try it. You fall into the pressure of starting to use substances, and we all know that substances can heighten domestic violence, meaning it can bring out strong emotions of anger, or whatever a person is feeling when they're under the influence, and can cause harm to their partner. You guys have anything else to add with that?
I think in that situation, it can even be if one person is misusing substances, the other partner who is the victim could be, I'll just stay and they'll change, they'll quit, they'll
Right.
get off. I'm just going to wait until they're not addicted anymore. And then they'll be the person that I want them to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that ties right back into what you were mentioning earlier of in love with their potential,
Yes.
which is so hard in substance misuse situations.
So another reason substance abuse plays a big part in domestic violence relationships is if you become dependent of your partner that's abusing you is your supplier, right? So you become dependent on them providing you the substances that you're now misusing in the relationship.
Yeah.
And or they'll that can get into a whole other topic for another day, but when you start to do things or feel like you are forced to do things for these substances, but that's a topic for another day.
Yeah, because that can turn into a lot, because you're also obviously somebody who is dealing with something.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're the victim of the abuse, that can also help you to self medicate.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Then you both become dependent.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there's always, when somebody's going to, say fix themselves, it's always, you can't do it yourself.
Yes.
There has to be somebody there to talk with, to guide you through that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing to look for is, once they start to, say, yeah, I need to talk with someone, then that's when they're truly, they're helping themselves to get out of that.
Yeah.
So
It's a really good point.
Going back to what you said about one partner being misusing substances and one partner not, we can come across a situation where the victim is potentially still, like you said earlier, in love with the potential and in love with, I love them regardless, using or not, and I'm hoping that they're going to change.
Mm-hmm.
I think also I wanted to make a point out too is that we do work with the Colorado River Indian Tribes domestic violence program.
Mm-hmm.
So, we can also be, help in, we do help and we do collaborate well with each other. So for the victim's sake. So I just want to put that out there.
To wrap this up, I would like to end with this quote I found on the National Domestic Violence Hotline website. It says, "No matter the reason, leaving any relationship can be difficult. Doing so in an abusive situation can feel impossible without the right access to support." And so just with that, we want to, again, let everyone know that we are here as a agency that can support you with while you're still in the relationship. If you have left the relationship, if you're thinking about leaving the relationship, we are here to provide that support to you and help you walk you through those steps and start your healing journey.
When you're ready to talk, call 888-499-0911. You can also reach out at our website, www.crrcs.com. You can email us at canwetalk@crrcs.com. And you can always follow us on our social medias, Facebook and Instagram.
Cuando estés listo para hablar, nos puedes contactar al número 888-499-0911. También por nuestra página a www.crrcs.com o los puedes contactar en nuestras páginas sociales en Facebook o Instagram.
Help.
Hope.
Healing.